On this channel, we've tested dozens of grinders, electric grinders, budget grinders, hand grinders, espresso grinders, filter coffee grinders, low retention grinders, end game grinders. But this one right here, the P100 from Option O, it may be my favorite. This is a 98mm flat burr grinder with low retention, variable RPM, thoughtful design, and the ability to do espresso and filter coffee. And I love it. It's absolutely incredible. And today what I want to do is share why that is. Why this is such a special grinder to me, why you may want to consider it, and who this grinder is really for. Now, I also want to compare it to its family of grinders, the P64 from Option O, as well as the Lagom Mini, which I've praised heavily on this channel. And I also want to brew some espresso and share the profiles I've experienced over the past few months. So stick around for that and let's dive into this. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Kyle here. Wherever you're watching from today, I hope you're doing absolutely wonderful. Now today's video is going to be a little bit more nerdy. It's going to be a little more extensive, maybe even a little longer. So do me a huge favor before we dive into this. Videos like this take a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of research. Scroll down, hit that thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, as well as let me know in the comments your favorite coffee origin. I'm truly curious, doing a lot of studies lately, and I want to know what your favorite coffee is. So Ecuador, Ethiopia, Colombia, whatever that might be, in the comments down below. I'll see you down there and I'm gonna read every single one of those. Okay, the P100, what a special grinder this is. For me, this is one of my favorite grinders of all time, if not my favorite grinder. And you wanna know why. Well, let's talk about its features and what it offers, but I would love to say this is not a grinder for everybody. This is a very expensive grinder, like ridiculously expensive. This is $2,600. So you wanna know what you get for the money. This is a big grinder, not just expensive, but large. Comparative to the Lagom Mini, I mean, it's not even close. Now, to be fair, the Lagom Mini is incredibly small, incredibly compact, and one of the smallest options on the market today. But even still, like if I put the P64 beside it, around the same height, but when it comes to the width of this grinder, it's almost twice as thick. Now up here is the hopper, and the lid actually pops out, which is very nice because this hopper can actually hold 100 grams of coffee. And then moving down, we've got like a stainless steel ring, and opposed to the P64's numbers on the actual adjustment dial, this one's actually on the stainless steel ring that actually can shift and move. Now at first I thought this was a flaw, but I quickly realized Option O has actually made it so that you can adjust the 0 point on demand. So if you're changing your burrs, maybe you're aligning your burrs, whatever the case, whatever factor might be, you can change where that 0 point is. This is also nice because you can customize where your zero might be. Now moving down from there, the P100, like their other grinders, don't require any tools. P64 now does, but before it didn't. And by simply twisting this off, we're greeted with a massive 98mm burr carrier. This is a 64mm burr, which at one point was considered very large. It's kind of like the gold standard now. And in comparison, this could just eat it up. This is like a baby burr compared to the 98mm. Just a little baby burr. Eats it up. And this is 60. What? I love it. Now this burr is been popularized by grinders like the EK43, which has used grinders like the SSP high uniformity burr, which is the one that I have right here. You can also get like a cast version of the EK43 burr from SSP. You can get the low uniformity. There's a couple different options that you can get, but the stock burr on the P100 is this one, which is the high uniformity burr. I'm gonna share my thoughts on the brews it makes, the profiles it creates very shortly. Now this is the stationary burr, the upper carrier, and on the lower burr carrier, that's gonna be a rotary burr. Unlike the P64, after grinding, you're gonna want to use its knocker feature. Now what this does is it brings out any grounds that have been, stuck inside the chute here. Maybe there's some static and some static cling, and it knocks out most of the retention. Now some people have modded this already. I haven't really found it to be an issue personally. It's not perfect. It doesn't get out like 100% of the retention, but this is a very low retention grinder. Actually, I can show you right now. I haven't cleaned this grinder in about 3 weeks. It's probably seen 2, 3, 4 bags of coffee in that time. And in here, you can see there's absolutely zero retention around the burr. The only coffee I can see in here is a small ring around the outside of the sweepers. It's gotta be less than 0.1 of a gram in there right now. And that really is just residual dust from where the sweepers don't touch. And even in the grind chute, I can see right through here, there's no coffee, none at all. So it does its part. Just like the P64, I would say this is on par. I wouldn't say it's better, it's definitely not worse. There's some features in here that really help it keep low retention. One of those features being its 2-button operation here. One button turns on the grinder, as you would expect. The other one works very similar to a grinder like the fellow Ode, where it recognizes there's no tension, there's no coffee left in the grinder. It actually purges out the grinder by speeding up the RPM for a couple seconds and then shuts off automatically. And then on the other side here, we have the RPM dial, and this is very similar to that P64. I really truly wish that they had RPM written on here, but in my experience with using my tachometer and also what's listed on their website, this goes from 200 to 1700 RPMs. Actually, realistically, what I've tested is around 250 up to about 1500 RPMs, give or take. It was more like 1480. Outside of that, we have our familiar portafilter forks out the front. You can either place the dosing cup up here, which again, like the P64, I wish it had something that could actually lock this in. It just kind of sits on top of the forks. You get used to it when using optional grinders. By no means is it a huge complaint or a big issue, but I think the polished and thoughtful design of this grinder, it just feels like this was an afterthought and it hasn't been changed for years. And then last but not least, down here, the actual base comes off. So if you don't want to have the base here to catch your coffee grounds, you want to save some space, you can do that. This doesn't really support its weight or balance by any means, but it is nice to have so that it can catch the coffee grounds if they do fall from the chute. It also comes with some accessories like a little spray bottle for RDT, which helps reduce static cling for the coffee grounds. It also comes with a magnetic dosing funnel, a little WDT or Weiss distribution tool to mix up those grounds. Again, this one's color matching and the new needles are a little longer than the old P64 ones. And then it still comes with this ketchup cup. This is just such a nice experience. And then this, I really don't get it. Optional, what is going on? You've heard so many people, including myself, and for the P64 I could let it slide, but for a grinder of this much money, why? It's for me as important as this guy. And we could dose with this, but then as soon as you spray it with water to help reduce static and grind into it, you've got yourself an absolute gong show. You can do better. In a second, we're gonna brew some coffee on the P100 and we're gonna brew some coffee on these two, but let's talk about some differences here. Number one, it's not gonna have that auto purge feature. On the P64, you're gonna have an on and off button here. Then the P64 is also a lot quieter, like a lot quieter. I forget that this thing is on at times. And then you've got the Lagom Mini over here, which this one over here is a conical burr. This one's got just a very similar design in terms of how it adjusts its grounds. It's stepless, it's got a nice little magnetic dosing cup. And funny enough, this has the nicest dosing cup of the three in my opinion. This one's actually magnetic. Why aren't these two magnetic? Why is that not a thing? Somebody tell me why the $400 grinder has the nicest dosing cup. Not to mention a lid. That's magnetic. Why are these two open? I'm definitely nitpicking here, but like, this grinder is so underrated. It's so good. I love it so much. And the sound of the Mini. I'm gonna say that these two are very similar in the volume that they emit, but the P64 wins for volume for sure. And then obviously design, this is super subjective. A lot of people think the P64 is one of the most beautiful grinders out there, and I can see what the draw is there. At first I thought the P100 was a little quirky looking, but I've actually really grown fond of this design and I prefer it now that it's been sitting on my bar for a while. But there's no doubting that the P64 is a work of art, and so is the Mini. All right, the Mini is a beautiful little compact grinder, but they are all beautiful. So you let me know what you think is the best aesthetically down below. Okay, it's time to brew some coffee. Time to share my thoughts on the profiles of this and these two grinders here. So while I'm getting the coffee ready and while I'm brewing this, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's video, which is Squarespace. Now, many of you don't know this, but I'm actually currently in the process of launching a new company. Now, I'm gonna talk all about it soon, but because of that, I've actually had to launch a new website and get a domain. But maybe you're in a similar spot and maybe you need to launch a business, or maybe you want to launch a blog to express yourself online, or an e-commerce store, or maybe something completely different. Whatever it might be, Squarespace is your non-stop shop. It takes creating wonderful creative ideas and turning them into live websites just super easy. Take one of their many different templates. No need to learn how to code or figure out how to program a website. All you do is implement your photos, your videos, your ideas, and bam, you have yourself an amazing, beautiful website. But don't just take my word for it. Use the link down below and create a website. Make something. It's free. Use that link. And when you're ready to launch, use code Kyle. It's 4 letters to save 10% off your website or domain. Go do it. Stop putting it off. Go make something absolutely beautiful. And thank you, Squarespace, so much for sponsoring today's video. It's just so fast. Okay, so when it comes to the P100, the coffee it creates is nothing less than exceptional. And you would hope so at this price range, but the 98mm burrs, those SSP high uniformities, are wonderful. For me, it's been described as the 64mm burrs be like turn up a notch, and I kind of disagree. I think that the 98mm high uniformity burrs, and we're gonna talk about the naming schemes because it's the most confusing thing. The high uniformity burrs, the 98 mils, are as high in clarity as the multi-purpose burrs or the unimodal burrs from 64mm size. I think they're at the same level of clarity, if not just a little bit more. But what really differentiates it for me is the level of sweetness that these burrs create. It's so uniform that it's really hard to create a lot of astringency in brews unless you're totally off. And then let's talk about his filter coffee profiles here. They reflect a lot of what we're experiencing in espresso. I love the P100 for its filter coffee. I think it's incredibly forgiving. It creates some of the most delicious, juiciest, sweetest cups that I've had in a very long time. Honestly, I was surprised how good they were. I was expecting this to be better than the P64 or that 64mm burr, but not this much better. And again, for me, I'm a sweetness junkie. I love high clarity. I love acidity. But when coffee has great sweetness, for me, that just that hits the spot. Now, because it's so high in clarity, you're really gonna know when a coffee is roasted with a defect or if the coffee was bad itself. But when it comes to brewing, I find them way more forgiving than any other burr that I've had. But let's brew some espresso on the 64 to see how it compares. It's also so good. A lot of diminishing returns does come into play here, and the P100 is not twice as good as the P64. It's just not. But I would say I have been impressed with how good those 98mm burrs are. It's got the same level of clarity, same level of acidity right off the tongue. And then later in the shot, a little bit of aftertaste. I've got a little tiny bit of astringency, just comparatively, right? Like the multi-purpose burrs are fantastic. They're super uniform. They're super wonderful, but it is similar. But I think that this one takes a slight advantage in terms of the sweetness in the cup for me. Now, the Lagom Mini is also a great grinder. And I think if you're looking for something a little more traditional, maybe you like more chocolatey espressos, or maybe you want more milk-based drinks or the occasional milk-based drink, that's where something for Lagom Mini would be my high recommendation. These two grinders are high in clarity, and so what that means is it's not gonna create the texture you might want from espresso. With the Lagom Mini, because of its conical burr, it's naturally gonna create more fines as it breaks down those coffee beans. That creates a little more texture in the espresso shot, and so it's gonna give those thick, syrupy shots. These two are really gonna be if you wanna drink like black espresso and you want the best results from modern style espresso. Now, to be sure, this result is not based off of one brew today. This is based off of hundreds of coffees I brewed over the past few months with a P100, P64, and Lagom Mini. But I would say that this is the burr you're not gonna really want for traditional style espresso. It's possible if you're doing like long pre-infusions, you're still gonna lack some of the texture you desire from some other traditional style grinders. But not every grinder is perfect. So what's wrong with it? Well, first of all, I really don't like how this shifts. I really think with a small design, something unique, Optional is gonna fix this. I think it will happen in time, but currently on my model, it's not lockable. And like I said on the P64, the RPM dial needs to highlight what RPM it's spinning at. This isn't hard to do. With a simple tachometer, we can simply figure out what speed is each number at and write it on here. I think optional, it's not too much to ask. It's kind of the gold standard in the industry right now. And I think it's gonna help people, especially just getting into higher end grinders like this, understand what's actually happening. The only other complaints I have is I wish this was magnetic. You know, when the Lagom Mini's magnetic, but not their P100 flagship for their dosing cup, I think that's an issue. I think simple magnets in the portafilter fork and this dosing cup, just to keep it in place, will go a long way. I've already dropped this on the base many times and I've got dents in the bottom because it falls out. It's not a big ask, but optional, it would go a long way. So let's wrap this up. The P100 is a fantastic grinder, and you would expect so at this price range. There are very few times where I spend this much money on a product and I'm completely satisfied. In the case of the P100, I truly am. It makes fantastic filter coffee, fantastic espresso. You can swap between the methods with ease, with near zero retention. This, I'm sure, like other Option O products, will evolve with time with small little minor adjustments. And I would like to see a lot of them backwards compatible if possible, especially for a grinder of this price range. Somebody's not gonna get the newest model if they already have a P100. Overall, as crazy as this might sound, this is my favorite grinder. It's so expensive, but it also creates fantastic coffee. And so I'm gonna be using this for years to come. So this review is gonna be almost a work in progress, and I'll be releasing more videos on the P100 in the years to come as I've used this year after year to share reliability, issues I've had, and basically how this grinder ages. So if you haven't, get subscribed so you don't miss those videos, and hit that bell so you know when those videos go live. Like this video if you enjoyed listening to me talk about a $2,600 coffee grinder over the past however long this video is. We will see you guys all in the next video. I love every single one of you. Have a wonderful day. Peace.